Everybody ready?
If you're ready, I'll start Zoom.
Kitty, are you ready?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Good. All right. All right. We're on record, Madam Clerk. Okay. We're good? All right. Good morning, everybody. It is August 4th, 2020. It is 10 a.m. My name is Chairman Bob Lucy. This is a special meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. Today, we convened on a special notice to discuss some special items today. We were meant to have a recess and a special break. We were supposed to be on recess this week. However, we felt it necessary to come in and discuss some of these items today. So we are, hence the reason for a special meeting. So with that, I will have we will do a salute to the flag, and Madam Vice Chair, will you lead us in the salute? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. All right, Madam Clerk, can I get a roll call?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Bob Lucy, Chair.
Here.
Marcia Burke-Bigler, Vice Chair.
Here.
Kitty Jung via telephone.
Present.
Von Hartung is absent on I believe, a pre-planned vacation. Jeannie Herman.
Here.
County Manager Eric Brown.
Here.
Assistant District Attorney David Watts-Vial. Via Zoom. Thank you. I'm Nancy Parent, County Clerk. You have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
All right. Do we know if that microphone right there is on in front of the Zoom speaker?
It should be, but that was very loud.
Yeah, it wasn't very loud. Dave, can you hear us? Can you comment one more time, Dave? No, we can't. We can barely hear you. I think there's an issue. Okay, anyways, we'll move on.
It's the other one.
Okay, can you test it and push it down by unspreading that speaker? Just gonna. All right. Okay, Dave, you're just gonna have to yell at us if you see something you want us to stop with. Mr. Manager, can we go to item 3, please?
Item 3 is public comment. Heard under this item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the commission agenda. The commission will also hear public comment during individual action items with comment limited to 3 minutes per person. Comments are to be made to the commission as a whole.
All right. Madam Clerk, do you have anything submitted to you via public comment?
We have Eric Norcross via voicemail.
All right, and we'll pull up that voicemail.
Hello, my name is Eric Norcross. I'm calling to leave a comment for the meeting that's going to be held August 4th, 2020 at 10 a.m. My comment is mainly towards Ms. Jeannie Herman. As good a job as she does do, I'm having a problem in my small community out here in Lemon Valley. I live on the corner of Nectar and Birch. Nectar has become quite the interstate in the last couple of years, ever since the shutting down of Arkansas. There is a number of solutions that I have come up with. I believe that there needs to be some speed bumps installed, a traffic calming device. Signs are not helping. There's a speed limit sign at the corner of Nectar and Lemon, but nobody pays attention to that. My concern is that 4 children and their grandparents live across the street on the other side of Nectar. And with 4 kids and the neighborhood that is growing with more children, it's only a matter of time before an accident happens. I have researched online and I've seen websites that you can buy the rubber bump stops or rubber speed bumps and have them installed at $60 for a 6-foot section. And it seems pretty cost effective considering you hammer them down with a spike. I would definitely like to see something happen out here as the speeders are out of control, and we definitely need some help. I'm really fearful that somebody's gonna get injured, if not killed. My address is 10970 Birch Street. I would appreciate some sort of contact or consideration because it's out of line and something needs to happen. There's no need for people to be going in excess of 60 miles an hour up this street. I invite any one of you folks to come out for a glass of iced tea. We can sit on the back patio and at 5 o'clock till about 7, or sometimes later, we can watch the traffic speed right by. It's kind of scary. I appreciate any consideration and anything that you guys can do to help this issue. Thank you.
And
All right.
next, Mr. Chair, we have an email from Daniel Purdy.
Okay. Madam Clerk, will you read that into the record, please?
I will. Public comment, Daniel Purdy, brother of Thomas Purdy, murdered in Washoe County. I can see from your last meeting that you do not listen to the voters that elected you, which is shameful. I lost my brother because of your ignorant. You choose to sit there and do nothing about the abuse going on at the jail. You would rather pay out millions of dollars instead of implementing better oversight over the jail. I can only stress upon you that you should listen to the voters elected you, but the next time any of you are up for re-election, I will be there to make sure that you are not re-elected, for you do not care about the citizens. All you care about is your salary. It's in the next meeting. I will be listing the exact amount of money each of you make for sitting on this board, which is an absolute disgusting amount of money for people who do not listen to their citizens. And that's the end of Mr. Purdy's comment, and the only comments I have, unless there's something on Zoom.
All right, and do we have anybody signed in on Zoom this morning that would like to speak at this time? All right. Seeing nobody, we will close public comment, bring it back to the board. We are on to item 4, Mr. Manager.
Item 4, Commissioners and County Manager announcements, reports and updates to include boards and commission updates, requests for information or topics for future agendas.
All right, Mr. Manager, do you have anything for us this
I
morning?
have nothing this morning, Mr.
All right.
Chair.
Commissioner Herman, do you have something?
Yes,
We'll go with you first.
okay. In regards to Mr. Norcross's comments in the last item, I had talked to him and suggested that he call in, and he has offered to pay, the neighborhood would pay for the speed bumps if the county would mount them. So that, I just wanted to add that in there. After the legislature met this weekend, there were quite a few comments made and people calling me, and some of these suggestions were brought up regarding the paper ballots. There is a notation or an affiliation of your party on your envelope that comes in the mail. And they felt that that was kind of a dangerous situation, and that it would be better if that were not on the envelopes. And then they thought that maybe there should be some handwriting experts that were checking the signatures, because there was a lot of people that their vote didn't count. They got sent back to them, but not in time so they could get in and vote physically. And so that was another item that we, make sure that people get those back in plenty of time to where they can actually come in and vote in person. And then, let's see, the other one was they felt that maybe we ought to have a little bit better supervision and involvement, in regards to the voting, the actual elections, and especially for the early voting. So that was the comments that I got. So that's just my suggestions.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Herman. Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have received recently a number of emails from a person who's wanting the county to open up our baseball fields. I didn't know we had baseball fields, frankly, but okay. I thought our parks were open, and so I'd really like someone to give me a report on what it is that we have closed, and are we stopping any of the sports teams from playing if the governor has allowed it to happen other places. So if someone would provide me with that information, I'd appreciate it. And just a personal comment I want to say, this is election season, and I would like to prevail upon people to be a little more polite to everybody. Has to be the meanest, nastiest election season I've seen anywhere, and I would just like to ask that everybody try to be kinder and gentler. Thank you.
Vice Chair, Commissioner Jung.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. I do have a few comments in regards to things that have transpired over the last week. My first comments were due to, got some emails last night on some clarity in regards to the governor's press conference that in regards to COVID-19 and the response, and how a majority of maybe decisions might be in enforcement and restrictions might be will be forced or transferred over to the counties now for their oversight and jurisdiction. We are still working with the governor's office on some more clarity in regards to exactly those, but we do have a pretty healthy understanding of what he is asking of us, and most of that is obviously enforcement, which we have been doing here at the county for the last a few weeks, and really trying to maintain a little bit higher level of, we're working with him obviously on contact tracing and testing, which we'll be talking about later today in regards to the CARES Act. And also, as both Commissioner Herman and Commissioner Birkbigler, or Vice Chair Birkbigler, had mentioned, through the legislative session, AB 4 was passed and signed by the governor yesterday in regards to mail-in ballots for this November's general election. As a point of clarity, if you are, being that this is now law in our state for this election under a state of emergency, I would urge anybody who is currently registered to vote to validate your mailing address, make sure that you're getting your ballots to the proper location for you to make sure that those elections go forward. We will be having probably some more discussions with the county manager and obviously the registrar of voters to make sure that those elections go off without any flaws. In November, we do have some planning to do, but we do need some participation from the public in regards to validating your address and party and many different things that you can do online at either washoecounty.us, or you can also do it at nvsos.gov, which is the Secretary of State's website, to validate those elections for you. Parks and playground equipment. I have had also the same discussions about where we are going with playground equipment and parks and baseball fields and whatnot. It is my understanding that based upon we are still following the CDC guidelines in parks, so open spaces and baseball can be allowed just in a spectatorless fashion, but playground equipment still remains closed, being that we are short-staffed in the Parks Department to sanitize the playground equipment, but our parks should be opened and maintained, just the open space parts of that, not the actual equipment itself. And another couple discussions is where are we going future-wise with schools. One of the other discussions I've had with schools, obviously many families heard last Tuesday, the schools have decided to continue to move forward with their decision to reopen in August. I applaud them for that decision. That was a very difficult decision. They sat there for quite some time and took a lot of public comment from both sides on the matter. I can understand how difficult those decisions can be. But Washoe County as a whole, once again, we'll be talking about CARES Act today, will remain committed to helping our other partners and colleagues along the way to make sure that we can help those students and families try to participate in somewhat of some normalcy. And I hate to use that word normalcy because there is a new normal, but we'll find some kind of balance for those individuals through a dynamic manner, working with the school district to help them with contact tracing and testing and how we continue to message how people should self-evaluate and self-test before taking their children to school so that we can continue to try to flatten the curve to the best of our ability. And those are my comments for the day. Madam Vice Chair, I have you sign back in.
Thank you. Thank you for mentioning AB4 as Commissioner Herman did. One of the things in AB4 is some language that allows people to get to help other people mark their ballots. And I'd like to hear from our voter registrar exactly how she's going to ensure that there's not fraud going on with that type of a requirement. I had a conversation with the Secretary of State. She is very concerned about the potential for fraud in that type of a setting and is going to have extensive conversations with all the county voter registrars. But I would like to know what our voter registrar is going to do and how she's going to ensure that there's not any fraud in that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right. Seeing no further comments, we'll close item 4, and we will go on to item 5. Mr. Manager.
Item 5 is a presentation, discussion, and possible action to approve a proposed settlement agreement between Washoe County and the League to Save Village Assets, Inc., the terms of which will result in dismissal by Washoe County of the appeal of the district court's decision in Village League to Save Incline Assets, Inc. et al. Versus the State of Nevada et al. Case number CV03-06922, Supreme Court Case number 80092, and other associated cases described in the agreement. Payment by Washoe County of refunds to Incline Village Crystal Bay residential property owners, taxpayers for the 2003, 2004, 2005, and 2005-2006 tax years in the total estimated amount of $56 million, the county portion of which is $23.8 million, and the remaining portion of which is attributable to the Washoe County School District, North Lake Tahoe Fire Protection District, Incline Village Improvement District, State of Nevada, with refund payments beginning July 1st, 2021, and made pursuant to claims, processes, and timelines described in the agreement. An interest holiday during which time no interest will accrue from July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2023, and other terms as described in the settlement agreement. If the settlement agreement is not approved, discussion and possible action by the board to authorize staff to present alternative terms of a proposed settlement to the Incline Village Crystal Bay residential property owners, taxpayers, through their counsel.
Okay. So we are going to get we have a presentation on this, Mr. Manager?
I believe we do from Mr. Wattsfield.
Okay. Mr. Wattsfield, can you hear us?
Oh, we can barely hear you.
Uh-oh. Hold on one second, Mr. Wattsfield. Keep talking, Mr. Wattsfield, if we can see if we can get you. All right. All right. All right. We're going to put ourselves in recess for just a minute till we figure out this technical issue so that we can hear Mr. Wattsfield. I think it's prudent we hear from our district attorney, deputy district attorney in regards to this matter before we take a decision on this. So I'll put us in recess for a minute. We're in recess.
Can we ask her?
Not hooked up.
Dave, can you speak now? Hey, Dave.
And are you picking up?
Okay. Are we good now? All right. All right, we're back, everybody. We'll bring ourselves back in from recess. We're back in session. And we are on item 5. This is a presentation, discussion, possible action to approve a proposed settlement. We are going to get a presentation from our Deputy District Attorney, Dave Wattsfield, and Herb Kaplan. Mr. Wattsfield.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. As you've noted, we're here on the settlement of the Incline Village case. Mr. Kaplan is going to give you a short presentation, then you're going to have the opportunity to vote on the settlement. Go ahead, Mr. Kaplan.
Thank you, and good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. For the record, Herbert Kaplan, Deputy District Attorney. And before the board today is an item for the possible action to approve a proposed settlement agreement between Washoe County and the Incline Village Crystal Bay residential taxpayers in connection with the taxpayers' challenge of property taxes assessed in that geographic area for the 2003, 4, 5, and 5, 6 tax years. In 2003, a few taxpayers in Incline Village, Crystal Bay challenged certain methodologies utilized by the Washoe County Assessor in valuing their properties for the 2003-4 tax year. In addressing that case, the Nevada Supreme Court ultimately found the valuations unconstitutional based on the fact that the state had failed to provide regulations for such methodologies to be utilized by all the assessors in Nevada in the same manner. The court found that the remedy was to void the valuations and reinstate the prior year's valuation, as that was the last unchallenged value. The instant lawsuit was brought in November of 2003 by the remainder of the taxpayers in Incline Village and Crystal Bay who had failed to go through the mandated administrative process. They also challenged their valuations as the assessor had used the same unconstitutional methods in valuing their properties. In addition, taxpayers claimed that their values were higher than and not equalized with the properties in Douglas County. After the district court dismissed the case based on the taxpayers failing to exhaust their administrative remedies, the Supreme Court eventually upheld the dismissal of the claim based on the methodologies, but remanded the case to the district court for determination of the viability of the county-by-county equalization claim. Once back at the district court, the taxpayers amended their complaint to make their claim one for regional equalization. In 2012, having found that the State Board of Equalization had failed in the tax years at issue to agendize any meeting for determination of statewide equalization, the court issued a writ requiring the State Board to conduct open, agendized meetings for statewide equalization for those years. Hearings were conducted in the fall of 2012, and the State Board eventually issued an order for the county assessor to reappraise the values of all Incline Village, Crystal Bay residential properties in an effort to place accurate values on those properties without the use of the methodologies previously deemed unconstitutional. The taxpayers challenged that decision, and the Supreme Court agreed with them, finding that the State Board did not have the authority to order reappraisal. The case was remanded for further proceedings again, and the State Board conducted another statewide equalization hearing in August of 2017. At the conclusion of that hearing, the State Board found that no equalization action was required. The taxpayers challenged that action, ultimately resulting in the district court ruling in their favor and performing regional equalization throughout residential Incline Village, Crystal Bay, by applying the same remedy the Supreme Court had applied for the few taxpayers who had gone through the administrative process in the other case. That decision has been appealed to the Supreme Court, and that appeal remains pending today. In the context of the appeal, however, the parties did discuss a proposed settlement, and that became the basis of the proposed agreement before the board today. The main terms of the settlement include Washoe County processing and paying refunds to approximately 9,000 Incline Village, Crystal Bay taxpayers for the 2003, 4, 5, and 5, 6 tax years. Interest will be calculated at the rate of 6% from the date the overpayment of property taxes is made. The total estimated amount of refunds is $56 million. The county's portion is approximately $23.8 million, with the remainder attributable to the Washoe County School District, North Lake Tahoe Fire Protection District, Incline Village General Improvement District, and the state of Nevada. Payment of the refunds will begin July 1st, 2021. Once refunds begin being paid, there will begin an interest holiday during which time no interest will be paid from July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2023. Along the way, there have been some changes made to the agreement to accommodate deadlines and the refund process. On the other hand, there are still provisions in the agreement that cause some concern for our office, and I just want to raise those issues today. One of the issues is the provision that provides for the potential termination of the interest holiday. And we do believe that that provision remains unclear as provided in the agreement. It appears as if the agreement provides that the county would have to maintain an average of 300 refunds being processed every month, or the interest holiday would terminate. And it's unclear as to what period of time the 300 average is to be calculated over. We did attempt to discuss clarification of that provision, and taxpayers declined our attempts, refused to discuss any proposed change. The other issue that I'd like to bring up, and that I feel that the board must consider in deciding whether to move forward with the proposed settlement, is the potential impact of the school district moving forward to challenge the withholding of funds from them for their portion of the refunds. The other tax units collectively will be responsible for more than half of the refund at this point. And this isn't the first time that this issue has come up. In 2006-07, when there was a regional equalization action in the same region, and refunds were ordered for that tax year, the North Lake Tahoe Fire Protection District did bring a legal challenge to the ability of the county to withhold the funds from at least their tax unit. In that case, the Supreme Court found that the board had the discretion to order the withholding, and the funds were withheld. That said, this is a slightly different situation, and the possibility, albeit somewhat unlikely, that a court finds that the county is not able to withhold the funds, it would leave the county responsible for more than twice the county's current anticipated financial responsibility for the refunds. And I feel this is something that the board should certainly consider in making a determination today. And with that, I'll entertain whatever questions the board might have.
Thank you, Mr. Kaplan. I appreciate it. Whoa. Got some. Any way we can get rid of that? All right. Can you hear me now? Oh. Too many microphones. All right. Okay, so this. All right. My goodness. Okay. Can't really go forward at this time until we have a mic situation. All right. How about now? Can you hear me now, Jen? Just turn my mic on, please. All right. Do you have me on? There you go. We have it on record now. I think you can hear me now. We're going to have to mess with this mics. You have to follow along with us while we work on our mic situation here. We did get a presentation from Mr. Kaplan in regards to the presentation. Madam Clerk, before we move forward with discussion, do we want to move to public comment, or would you? Okay. Do we have any public comment signed in, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Chair, we did receive a letter from the Washoe County School District dated July 31st, 2020, It's 3 pages long, signed by Melena Raymond and Dr. Kristen McNeil, which I'll place on the record of today's meeting.
Great, thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Is there any other public comment at this time? All right, we do have a Zoom, so we have Mr. Aaron Katz. All right, Mr. Katz, hold on one second, okay? Mr. Katz, if you could go ahead and can you hear us, Mr. Katz? Can you unmute yourself, Mr. Katz?
Does that work?
Mr. Katz, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can the commission hear me?
Nope. Hold on one second, Mr. Katz. Do you have the? No, I can hear it. I can hear him on the speaker. Can you turn the speaker up a little bit? Mr. Katz, can you keep talking for a second just so we can hear you?
Yes, testing 1, 2, 3.
Perfect. We got you now, Mr. Katz. Thank you so much for being.
much.
Thank you for being patient with us. All right, Mr. Katz, you have 3 minutes. The floor is yours, sir.
I am a current property owner of Incline Village. I was not a property owner between the years 2003, 2006, and this forms the basis for my objection. The proposed settlement gives refunds to property owners who owned in 2003, 2006, who are not current property owners. Where does the money come from to fund the proposed refunds? Insofar as the county is concerned, general fund revenues. However, insofar as the fire, school, and Incline Village GID districts are concerned, current property owners are going to be the ones that end up paying their share, which is over 50% of the proposed settlement. The last refund go around, the fire districts simply increased their ad valorem tax rate to come up with a deficiency. Insofar as IVGIT's concerned, it used its rec fee having nothing to do with recreation to make up for the deficiency. So bottom line, current Incline Village Crystal Bay property owners are going to end up paying for the over half of the proposed settlement. Although that's okay for current property owners who are receiving refunds, it's not okay for the current property owners not getting any refunds, which includes me. And I don't know what that percentage is, but I'm going to guess, and it's nothing more than a guess, probably 2/3 of the property owners. You need to change this settlement and make those who are getting the refunds pay for them, not the rest of us. It's totally unfair. Thank you very much, and I hope you'll go back to the drawing board to address this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Katz. Appreciate your comments today. Next, I have Mr. Todd Lowe. Now, Mr. Lowe has been the representative for the Village League to Save Incline Assets, Inc. Mr. Lowe, in meetings past and years past, we do allow one representative for the group to have 5 minutes. I will grant you 5 minutes this morning to make your comments in regards to this presentation. Mr. Lowe, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me? This is Todd Lowe.
Yes, Mr. Lowe, we can hear you perfectly. Thank you. So we will give you 5 minutes on the record, and the floor is yours, sir.
All right. Thank you, Chairman Lucy, and members of the commission, and for giving us 5 minutes. I probably only need 2 minutes. What I'd like to say is that this is an important step in a journey to a settlement of a long dispute. After Judge Draculich's order in October of 2019, together, and starting in December of last year, we began this settlement process. And that led to an agreement between taxpayers and the county, which was memorialized on February 4th before a Supreme Court settlement judge. And I want to start by thanking all the participants in that very large meeting who put their signatures on that agreement, including Chair, you, Bob Lucy, and Vice Chair Marcia Burke-Bigler. A lot's happened since during these last 8 months, including the last few, for many reasons. We worked out a lot of details that were necessary. And then after thought we were all done, the pandemic hit, and we went back to work and did more details and added special terms related to the pandemic and easing the burden on the county. It wasn't an easy job. And it went on and on. And finally, 2 weeks ago, Marcia and I had the pleasure of kind of spending the weekend together to bang out the last little bit. So I want to shout out and give special acknowledgement and thanks to Marcia Burke-Bigler, but also to Mike Clark and his deputy, Corey Burke, and especially County Manager Eric Brown, because every one of them went the extra mile to bring us to this point. So an upvote on this agreement that we created together in 17 years of litigation. And not just the one suit, but there's 7 others there in the hopper that get cleared out with this agreement. And I think most importantly, we need to acknowledge that by doing this and voting for this today, we save taxpayers throughout the county an additional $25 million. And that's what makes it worth it. We end the litigation, we save everybody money, and we do the right thing. And that's really all I have to say today. And thanks for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Lowe. All right. I see no further public comments signed in to speak at this time. So we will close public comment and bring it back. Madam Clerk, you have no further emails? All right.
No, sir.
All right. And we will bring it back to the board for further discussion in regards to this settlement that we have posed in front of us. Up first, I have Madam Vice Chair Burke-Bigler. This is your district, so the floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make clear that a lot of time and effort, as Mr. Lowe indicated and as the district attorneys both indicated, a lot of time and effort over the past year has been really focused on resolving and settling this. I also want to shout out Mike Clark, our assessor's name, for all of the help he gave us in pulling this together, and of course the treasurer, who has done yeoman's work on this, and I know will do yeoman's work on paying this off if it is settled. I haven't heard from any of the entities, either IVGID or the fire district, North Lake Tahoe Fire District, that they have any plans to raise rates or raise fees in any way. So I don't believe that is on the table. And of course, the county and the school district don't have that ability to raise rates, raise fees on anybody to do that. So this settlement will be something that we pay out from existing funds and will be something that is extremely important to resolve and save a lot of millions of additional dollars. So I would very much support this and hope that the rest of the commissioners who are here today can support it also. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Commissioner Herman.
I've always thought that we should pay our bills, and especially on this has been going on for long enough, and I am ready to vote that we pass this. Thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you, Commissioner Herman. Appreciate it. Commissioner Jung, do you have any comments that you'd like to make at this time?
I have a couple of questions, Mr. Chairman. I heard from Mr. Lowe, but I want to know who are the attorneys on the other side that can answer
Any comments from
contractual
Commissioner
questions.
Jung?
Can you hear me?
I think I've been through this, this staff report and this settlement a number of times. We have looked at this for quite some time, and as oh, Commissioner Jung, you are there. Okay.
Excuse me, I have some questions.
Yeah. I asked and we didn't hear you, so I didn't know if you had any extra. So go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now, madam. Go ahead.
Thank you. I would like to know, I understand Mr. Love is here and spoke from his side, but where are the attorneys that are signing off on this? Because I have some real questions that I want to get on the public record with the authorizers in question in terms of the interest holiday and the withholding, because I understood from what I could hear from Mr. Kaplan, which, by the way, the audio is still not great, everyone, that the interest holiday is not tightened up enough in terms of parameters and discussions, and that the withholding as well. So whom do I ask these questions to? Whom has the authority to talk for the attorneys who are going to sign any sort of settlement if we agree to them?
Mr. Manager, do you want to field that, or Mr. Wattsfield?
That would be Mr. Wattsfield.
Mr. Wattsfield, can you field that question for Mr. Commissioner Jung, please?
Sure, we can answer any questions that the commissioner has. Ultimately, the district attorney's office doesn't sign the agreement. It's going to be the board that takes a vote on it, but we're happy to answer any questions that the commissioner has.
We got some audio issues, Mr. Chairman. I didn't ask for the DAs. I know who signs on our side. I'm asking, as I prefaced, Mr. Lowe presented, can I please hear from that side whom is advising them and has the authority to sign a contract? Some questions I have about the contract.
Okay. So the questions was to Mr. Lowe. Do we have Mr. Lowe on Zoom? Mr. Lowe, did you hear Commissioner Jung's comments?
I think I heard it, and I think the question is, well, maybe I should hear it again.
Okay. Commissioner Jung, can you please restate your question for Mr. Lowe, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Lowe, do you have the authority to state on the public record some concerns and to assuage my concerns in verbally and in writing and sign this contract? Or do I need to speak to somebody else?
Okay, the answer to that question is, as I think you know, I serve as the president of the Village League to Save Incline Assets, which represents all taxpayers in Incline Village. That organization is governed by a board of directors, and that board has empowered and authorized me to speak on their behalf in this meeting, and will this same day approve the settlement agreement, assuming an upvote. So the short answer is yes, I have that authority.
Okay, now my next question is for either Wattsfield or Kaplan. What would make it better for you verbally on the record, and for me, frankly, because these are my taxpayers too, Mr. Katz, it's all the taxpayers of Washoe County. I need to know from Wattsfield or Kaplan, this is the time to use legalese, stated on the record, included in the motion, about this average month refunding and the interest holiday. That needs to be cleaned up. I understand that everybody's exhausted, but I'm still on the line for this. I am the fiduciary agent for District 3. So I need to know what needs to be said in the motion for me to support this. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, this is Dave Wattsfield. We have the motion that's been formulated at the very end of the staff report. As to the question as to whether or not something that Mr. Lowe says today or not, the only time anything that Mr. Lowe says today that would come into effect is if there was a dispute over one of the terms in the agreement. As a general legal proposition, the terms of the agreement govern the terms and the interactions, rights, and duties of the parties. If the commissioner has questions of Mr. Lowe, she can go ahead and answer. He can go ahead and answer those if he feels comfortable. He's represented by counsel. If he doesn't feel comfortable answering them, then I guess that would be up to him.
Okay, that's not what I asked, Mr. Chairman. Let me get really clear here. I need to know what we need to say in our motion to assuage Mr. Kaplan's concerns, specifically, not as it relates to the other agencies that are going to pay, specifically as it relates to our interest holiday. What legal terms do we need in the motion?
Mr.
Well, I
Watts.
believe that the concern with the interest holiday has to do with the average of cases per month. And if in the previous incarnation of the agreement that was put in the last agenda, there was a proposal in that agreement to, I believe, to average the 300 per month would be averaged over a 6-month period. Mr. Kaplan can correct me on that if I'm wrong, but I believe that was correct. If that's the motion that the commissioner wanted to make, then you could make the motion and you could say that you wanted to approve the settlement agreement along with if the agreement was changed to reflect, and then you could fill in whatever terms you wanted. And then you.
And those are the terms that come from Mr. Kaplan and you, Mr. Wattsfield.
Kitty, Commissioner John, can you restate that? We didn't hear you. Broke up.
One of you want
Okay, well, I have a vote. I need Wattsfield.
Hold on, Mr. Lowe, hold on. I'm trying to hear Commissioner John.
I need Mr. Wattsfield to tell me exactly what caveat as my legal representative, what exactly I need to say to make Mr. Kaplan's concerns be assuaged in a legal contractual manner, or I'm not supporting the motion. And that's okay. I'm only one of 4 of you. So that's where I'm at. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner John. Mr. Lowe.
I think this concern is based on a misunderstanding and a misreading of what's in the settlement agreement. And I am here with counsel, and since we're going this direction, I'll let my counsel speak and answer the question as clearly as possible. And I assure you that when they're done talking, this will be a non-issue. And even if it was an issue, the settlement agreement provides for the working out of details and misunderstandings and clarifications like this down the road. This will not be the only question that comes up. There will be others in the future. And we're prepared, as I think we've already demonstrated, to do that. But we are not prepared to take the settlement agreement and make it any different than what it is right now, because it's a product of a lot of hard work and a lot of difficult and good thinking. So this is the moment to get it done. And this is not a moment to change it in any way, shape, or form, because that has a consequence that has a price tag of at least $25 million. So with that, I'm going to let my counsel speak to this question and hopefully provide some clarification about this.
All right. Mr. Lowe, could you introduce your counsel, please?
Now is the time.
Mr. Lowe, can you please introduce your counsel?
Okay, with you right now is Norm Azevedo.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, for the record, Norm Azevedo. And Commissioner Jung, I think the best way to address the termination language regarding the interest is to go to the agreement itself, because not only do we have the language that addresses the calculation or the termination of the interest holiday, but there's also examples to follow. And so the examples should provide any clarity that anyone needs to look at in determining on how that termination would occur. It's on page 12, paragraph C, going over to page 13. And so specifically, it talks about how it's calculated. So without more specificity from the DA's office or Commissioner Jung, I don't know how to go further than the express language of the agreement.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Acevedo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would also add, for clarification on this, that we have discussed this with the treasurer, and the treasurer is not concerned about this because of the way the process will work, and she doesn't think there's a problem with the language as it exists. And I understand our district attorneys and their job is to make sure that legal details and all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. But it is also true that the treasurer is very satisfied with this agreement as it's currently written and does not think there's a problem. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Commissioner Jung, do you have any further questions for either our council or the council of the village?
I do not. Thank you.
Okay. See no further questions. Yes. All right. We have our Washoe County Treasurer, Ms. Tammy Davis, and she would like to speak in regards to the settlement. Ms. Davis.
Good morning. For the record, this is Tammy Davis, Washoe County Treasurer. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Ms. Davis.
Well, I don't know if we're going to be able to pick that up on the recording.
Wow, it goes.
Okay. Can you speak a little closer into your microphone, or if you could, Ms. Davis?
This is Tammy Davis, Washoe County Treasurer. Is that better?
That's better. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify, in reading the language that Mr. Azevedo pointed out, it looks as if every month the averaging resets for a 2-month period. There are other places in the agreement where they mentioned a 6-month period. We were seeking that clarification mainly so that we know the rules when we start. And again, I don't want that to be a stumbling block, but it would be good to have that clarified. Thank you.
All right, can we, so based upon Ms. Davis's comments in regards to that clarification, Mr. Lowe or Mr. Acevedo, can you clarify that for us, please?
Yeah. Just one moment.
All right.
So, yeah, I'll start. The way it works is it's a simple average that extends over all time. There's nothing in the agreement about 2 months or anything like that. So as long as the average is maintained, divided by the number of prior months paid, that's it. It's really simple. There's an example in the agreement that illustrates this, or several examples, actually. So it's unclear to me how that example got construed as a 2-month time window, because it is no such thing. Right, so as if we've done 6 months of refunds, you divide the number of refunds done by 6. If you've done 10, you divide the number done by 10. If you've done 20, you divide by 20. We know Tammy can do this because she's done well above this back in 2011. So I think it's very doable. I think it's very reasonable, and it's just a precaution that makes sense and is fair. Does that help?
Yes, hold on a second, Mr. Lowe. Madam Vice Chair.
Mr. Lowe or Mr. Acevedo, either one, would it be fair to ask you to state for the record that it isn't your intention to waive the interest holiday so long as the treasurer continues to move forward, that your concern really relates to the possibility that for whatever reason the treasurer doesn't complete or doesn't move forward with the issues and with the payments? I mean, I think that's what the treasurer is worried about. And I, again, don't want to speak for Tammy, but I think that there's no intention on the part of the county to stop paying this once we've agreed to pay it. And so once this agreement is in place, Tammy will move forward and do the work that she's got to do. Ms. Davis will do that. And so as long as there's no underlying desire on the part of the either of the Incline Village group or their attorneys to find a hook to come after the county. I think that's really what we're trying to, what is trying to be established here, is that there is no intention to do that. Now, as it happens, because I've had extensive conversations with Mr. Lowe, I know there's no intention to do that. I know that's not, they're not looking for a hook here. They're just looking to make sure that it doesn't say, okay, we agreed to this, well, now we're going to drag our feet. So I know that that's what they're after. And so I would just ask if you could simply put that on record, maybe that would help Commissioner Jung. Thank you.
Commissioner Burke-Bigler, your statement is exactly as we intend. There's no intention to put a hook or a trap or anything, and we only want that once the refund process begins, that it continues ratably, and no other purpose.
Okay. Madam Vice Chair, do you have any other questions?
No, I was just going to say thank you.
Okay. All right. So that we can put this in some plain terms for many of the individuals out there for us today, based upon the staff report, many individuals, the settlement agreement has not been made public yet for those individuals. The village asserts that the interest holiday will start from July 1st, 2021 through July 1st, 2023, correct? Mr. Lowe?
Actually, the interest holiday starts no later than that. It starts anytime payments begin.
Okay. All right. And but the end date would be July 1st, 2023, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
But it's a 2-year holiday is what it is.
A 2-year holiday. And so, and payments can commence at any time, but no later than July 1st, 2021, correct?
That is correct.
All right. And at this time, currently, we are accruing interest based upon the judgment from Judge Draculich, correct?
Also correct.
Okay. All right. Mr. Lowe, for the record, can you put on the record who is on the board of the village to save the league to save the village assets? Can you put your members of your board on the record, please?
Sure. The current board is a 4-member board. It's myself, Les Barda, Dale Akers, and Dean Ingmanson.
Okay. All right, thank you. And you are represented by Mr. Norm Acevedo as your legal counsel. Do you have other?
Norm Azevedo, Jessica Prunty, and Sue Ellen Fullstone.
All right, thank you. All right. Any further questions from the board for Mr. Lowe or Mr. Watts-Viel in regards to the item? Seeing none, I have no further questions. Madam Vice Chair, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I will make a motion, and I will read this motion from the staff report. I move to approve the proposed settlement agreement between Washoe County and the League to Save Village Assets, Inc., the terms of which will result in dismissal by Washoe County of the appeal of the district court's decision in Village League to Save Incline Assets, Inc. et al. Versus the State of Nevada et al. Case number CV 03-06922 and other associated cases described in the agreement. Payment by Washoe County of refunds to Incline Village Crystal Bay residential property owners, taxpayers for the 2003-04, 2004-05, and 2005-06 tax years in the total estimated amount of $56 million. The county's portion of which is $23.8 million, and the remaining portion of which is attributable to the Washoe County School District, North Lake Tahoe Fire Protection District, Incline Village Improvement District, State of Nevada, with refund payments beginning no later than July 1, 2021, and made pursuant to claims and processes and timelines described in the agreement. An interest holiday during which time no interest will accrue from July 1, 2021, or when the payments begin, to June 30th, 2023, and other terms as described in the settlement agreement.
And I'll second that.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Further discussion. In the settlement, based upon the motion just stated by Vice Chair Burke-Bickler and seconded by Commissioner Herman, is there a release, Mr. Watts-Vial, for future claims in regards to this matter? We have the dismissal of the case, but is there a release of future claims?
There is, I do not believe there is a release of future claims. Mr. Kaplan, can you address that?
I can, and I don't believe that there is a provision. However, the very nature of property taxation would eliminate any basis for challenge on these particular tax years, if that's what you're asking.
Yes, that is what I'm asking in regards to. However, my question is that once the timeline of the 2023 and all claims have been paid, whether accounted for or not through the process outlined in the settlement agreement, is there a release for the county in regards to any future people, any future persons that may have paid in those tax years to come back and claim after the statute of limitations has run on this?
The agreement provides for a claims process, so all property owners will be determined and notification sent to all property owners. Ms. Davis's office has already begun to locate owners since there is, a 17-year, 18-year gap in time, and some of these people do not currently own the properties. She has already started locating those individuals, and notices will be sent to all property owners entitled to a refund, at which point they will have the opportunity to submit a claim. There is the possibility that someone has inadvertently been left off of the list of parcels and the owners. And in that event, there is the possibility that an individual owner can come back to the county. There is a provision in the agreement that requires them to first go through the assessor and the treasurer's office to try to reconcile that issue. And I feel that through that process, that can most likely be resolved. So in terms of the possibility is there that an individual property owner could come back and challenge not being included, or potentially challenge the calculation of the refund. However, the Village League represents all of those property owners, and for all intents and purposes, the Village League has calculated those refunds. So there should be a good basis for the property owners to have an idea of what their refunds are going to look like. So yes, there is no actual release of future claims. There's a process for reconciling some of these issues contained in the agreement that will allow individuals to come back and challenge those particular issues.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kaplan. All right. Commissioner Jung, do you have any further discussion prior to the motion and prior to the vote? Commissioner Jung, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, do you have any other further discussion prior to the vote?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor. At this time, I will call, we've taken public comment. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed,
No.
Commissioner Jung voting in the opposition via the phone. Motion carries with 3 commissioners in the affirmative and Commissioner Jung in the opposition for 3-1 with Commissioner Hartung absent. Thank you, commissioners, and Mr. Lowe, and all the individuals on the phone joining us for this. All right, moving on, we are on to item 6. Mr. Manager.
Item 6 is a recommendation to accept a federal assistance of coronavirus relief fund allocation from the State of Nevada Governor's Finance Office in the amount of $20,254,818, no county match, retroactive from March 1st, 2020 through December 30th, 2020, authorize the county manager to sign award documents and direct the comptroller's office to make the necessary budget amendments and possible direction to staff regarding expenditure of award funds. And we have a presentation this morning from Assistant County Manager Veletich and Ms. Enfield. I will say before they present, as I think all the commissioners are aware, we did receive, we were notified of a pending grant award of $20.2 million. We've been working with our other jurisdictions in Sparks and Reno to determine how to appropriately fund the shared costs for things like PPE, shelter for those who need to be quarantined, testing expenses, post expenses, and the like. You will see what we have spent to date, and you will see the categories that are being contemplated in terms of how to spend the balance of the money. We also have available, if there are any questions today, the health officer, I think, is also on the line if there are questions for the health officer. But at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Assistant County Manager Veletich.
All right, Ms. Veletich.
Thank you, Manager Brown and Chair Lucy. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you very much, and we can see your screen.
Okay, wonderful. Yes, so with me today for the record also is Gabrielle Enfield, our Washoe County Grants Administrator, our resident expert on grant funding, and we are going to be co-presenting today. So we'll be kind of tag teaming this presentation. And if you will go to the next slide, please. So the CARES Act, which stands for the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, is a grant award, and it's made by the U.S. Treasury, intended to reimburse local governments for costs in response to the COVID-19 pandemic and health emergency. A total of $150 billion has been authorized nationally, and the state of Nevada received an allocation of $1.25 billion. Initially, some entities were able to receive funding directly based on population, and so that cutoff point was a population of 500,000 or greater. So for state of Nevada, Clark County did receive a direct allocation of the CARES Act funding several months ago. But for those of us that fall below that population level, we are being allocated money through the state, and there is a process that we're going to talk about how we go about getting that money today. Regionally, for our region, $86.1 million has been allocated, and the breakdown you can see there, Washoe County, $20.2 million, City of Reno, $46.7 million, and City of Sparks, $19.2 million, roughly. And that allocation was based on population within our county. So Washoe County unincorporated, a lesser population than the City of Reno, and therefore a lesser allocation. And I'm going to now, you can go to the next slide, please. And I'm going to turn it over to Gabrielle to talk about what is eligible under the CARES Act in terms of expenditures and costs.
Good morning, Chairman, County Commissioners. The Coronavirus Relief Fund CARES Act is federal assistance. So our eligibility costs are going to be in line with general federal funding.
Gabrielle, it's hard to, Gabrielle, it's hard to hear you.
Can we stop you for a second? We're having a really difficult time hearing you clearly. Is there a way, we can get you a little bit clearer on your microphone? I apologize. I know it's challenging.
No, I'm sorry. Is this better?
Yeah, not really. Unfortunately, we're getting some pretty bad feedback. Let's see. All right, go ahead, Ms. Infield. Can you try again?
Okay. Thank you. So initially, we need to ensure that the expenses are necessary. They're incurred due to COVID-19 public health emergency, and that they're necessary for the intended use and reasonable in the judgment of a reasonable individual. So that's kind of the general federal, top line of eligibility. Is it necessary for what you're funding? Before I go on, are you hearing me better?
We are a little bit. We're trying to do it as best as we can on our end, but continue, please.
Okay. So what the funds may be used for, you can see there is a very broad range of funding of expenditures that this can be used for. Medical expenses, public health, payroll. For public employees, if those public employees were substantially dedicated to the mitigation or responding of the emergency, economic support, secondary effects, and other costs that are reasonably necessary. Now, we've got that last category that is really, there's a lot of things that we need to do that might be related to COVID, and they don't fall into any of these other very broad categories. You'll see these categories again when we give the breakdown of the expenditure plans. So, also, we may not use these funds for shortfalls for government revenue unless they otherwise qualify. So some of these expenses, like payroll expenses, would be expenses that we've budgeted, but the staff are substantially dedicated to the response, then they would be eligible. We want to make sure that everything meets eligibility tests. Some costs may fall into a gray area, and our goal is to submit for reimbursement those costs that are most appropriate to utilize the funds that clearly fall into the categories of eligibility. Since these are federal funds, all of the costs and all of the expenses must be subject to federal procurement guidelines, and that involves ensuring a competitive process for all expenses over $10,000, unless, of course, it's an emergency need. And we're seeing less of those emergency purchases now that we're into the response month. And lastly, if we have received more funds, then we are able to justifiably support eligibility for, then we must pay back those funds and be ineligible as of December 30th. So we have a very short time frame for the expenditure of these funds, March 1st through December 30th, 2020. So the funding is provided to us under two disbursement methods. We're receiving the funding through the Governor's Office of Financial Office, and they're dispersing it. The first allocation will release 50% of the funds immediately, and this is a lump sum that will come to us in an estimated 5-day period. In order to submit that packet, we need a signed, notarized eligibility certification letter signed by our executive, and that has been signed by Manager Brown, and signed acknowledgement of the agreement to the terms and conditions. So both those documents will be provided to us. The third document is the initial plan for expenditures, number one. So this is our plan for expenses that have been incurred from August 1 and expected through, March 1 through August 31st. So this is the plan that you received with the staff report, and it's an estimate based on some actual costs as well as planned costs. The second allocation, the state will release the second 50% of funds on a monthly reimbursement. So starting the 1st of next month, we will submit a final plan for the first 50% and confirm all of our allocations have been, how they've been spent. So right now we're submitting estimates and a plan. September 1, we will submit a final confirmation on actual expenses for the first 50%. We will also be submitting a plan of expenditures for the second 50%. That's plan number 2. Again, these are estimates. We'll be submitting worksheets. So the worksheets are the reporting on actual expenses. We need to submit that on September 1 from March through June. Going forward, monthly, we will be reporting on actual expenses starting in July. So the first one is due the 10th of August. They're due the 10th day of the following month. And then the other timeline we need to attend to is any unspent funds need to be returned to the state by March 1, 2021. And I am going to hand it over to Christine.
Thank you, Gabrielle. Commissioners, I put this slide together so that we could take a look at those county expenditures that we've already incurred between March 1st and June 30th. And as you know, the county has been part of a unified command structure in response to the public health emergency. And during that time period, the county has been the entity that has incurred these costs and paid for costs up front under a cost-sharing agreement. And I'll get into that a little bit more on the next slide, but just wanted to show you here what we've actually expended in terms of regional costs. So those would be the costs under the cost-sharing agreement for the incident management team and other costs, which we'll look at in a moment. And then we've also had some internal costs. So, you know, those are for things like sanitization supplies. We put in partitions and sneeze guards in different departments, teleworking equipment, personnel, and other costs related to COVID-19. So these are just for the period of March 1st through June 20, and the total amounts to $9,142,000. And if we can go to the next slide, we'll take a closer look at now just the regional costs. So which is that $7,361,000 under the cost sharing agreement. So I know this may be a little bit of a busy slide, but bear with me. If we focus on the left-hand side, you can see that pie chart there, and it's just kind of a breakdown of the costs under the cost-sharing agreement. You can see the incident management team costs there. That is for basically the team running the response to the pandemic and the public health emergency. We've got money for post, our testing, alternative care site, and then the Edison compound really is kind of the largest share of that. So when we break that down, some of these costs are eligible for FEMA reimbursement and some are not, and that was contemplated under the cost sharing agreement. So FEMA, if a cost is eligible under FEMA, FEMA will reimburse up to 75% of that cost. The rest is known as local share, or the ineligible portion, and per our cost-sharing agreement, we've agreed to cover that non-FEMA eligible portion, if you will, Washoe County paying 50%, City of Reno 35%, and City of Sparks 15%. So if we go then to the right-hand side of the chart, we can see these same expenditures from March through June by funding source, and basically how are they going to ultimately be paid for under the cost-sharing agreement. So we have the portion that is actually FEMA eligible, that's $2,575,000. And then the rest of the cost fall under that FEMA ineligible portion of the agreement, that 50%, 35%, 15% respectively. So Washoe County's portion of the non-FEMA eligible CARES, which we would be including in our CARES spending plan number 1, the one that we're going to submit, is $2,392,000, and then the City of Reno share would be $1,674,000, and City of Sparks $717,000. So that makes up that $7,361,000 figure of costs that Washoe County has actually incurred through from March 1st through June 30th. So those are the regional expenses. And if we go to the next slide, then we can take a look at what we would be submitting for our first allocation. As Gabrielle explained, we're ready to submit. We're just waiting for the opportunity to present this to the board today. A largest share of that first allocation that we'll be requesting is for the expenditures that we've already incurred, which just gone through. We also can submit for planned expenditures from July through August. And so those are planned or estimated in here right now. It totals $10,127,000. That's 50% of our first allocation through the governor's office. And if we submit that, we will be receiving that money in a lump sum within 5 business days. And you can see here from the graph that that breakdown there is $5,959,000, or 59% of it is for those regional expenses, and then internally $4.1 million, or 41%. And we can go to the next slide, if you would, please. Okay, so here we're taking a look at that initial spending plan, first allocation, now looking at that $10,127,000 by CARES expenditure category. So these are the categories under which expenses are allowable for CARES funding. And we've got the largest chunk, 46%, for public health. That is for quarantine facility, PP&E, the incident management team, homeless assistance, public outreach, and a UNR wastewater study. So that's the largest chunk there. We've got $1.8 million for testing and contact tracing and alternate medical care. Payroll, we have public safety and human services personnel costs that we've incurred that qualify for reimbursement under CARE, so we've included those. Health compliance, there's a number of things in there, including food access and delivery. We are looking to contract with Delivery with Dignity for delivery of food to seniors who cannot get out because of quarantine with COVID. Telework capabilities, these were for additional equipment needed by county employees, and for on the network components to help us be able to effectively telework during the pandemic. Jail sanitization and social distancing. And then we also have in there $500,000 for economic support. This is for our small business assistance program that I believe Commissioner Burke-Bigler had initially requested, and other board members have mentioned in the past. And here what is being contemplated is joining a program that NACO provides for a contracted administrator of the program of assistance to small businesses. And that is something that is being worked on by my cohorts, Dave Solero and Kate Thomas, the other assistant county managers. So this really is a breakdown of what we would be submitting to the state. Again, the largest share of it is for costs that we've already incurred that we absolutely would want to get reimbursed for. And these expenditures take us through August 31st. And I'm gonna now turn it back over to Gabrielle to talk about what is entailed in our second allocation.
Christine, before we move on,
yes.
Gabrielle, can you hold on just 1 second? I want to make sure that if there's any questions by the commissioners for the first allocation before we jump into the second allocation. Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you. Oops. Thank you. I do have one question. Could you go back to slide 8, please?
Sure.
So this shows that it looks like this is just Washoe County's share of what's already been spent. So are you saying that the 2 cities are also going to submit their portion of what's already been spent for reimbursement? And if that's the case, will they reimburse us, or how is that going to work?
Well, if we maybe could go back 2 more slides. Let's go back to slide number 6. Yes, under the cost sharing agreement, those costs that you see in the table there at the bottom right are the responsibility of City of Reno and City of Sparks in the cost sharing agreement that we're all a party to. I'm not sure if they are going to submit for CARES funding for those payments.
They are.
Certainly, that would be a great recommendation because it is available and it's eligible. But yes, you're right. In our initial request, it includes our portion of the non-FEMA eligible CARES reimbursement and the other costs that were outlined by category.
Yeah,
But it does not include, so that basically.
It doesn't include City of Reno or City of Sparks.
Okay, good. That's what I was looking for.
We would look to receive that reimbursement from the cities.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right.
Are there any other questions?
Commissioner Jung, do you have any questions for staff on the first allocation? I'm not hearing what Commissioner Jung, but Christine, I do have a question in regards. So as you're pointing at, while we're sitting on slide 6, my understanding is I look at this, and can you hear me, Ms. Valetich?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Just fine.
So my understanding is that the 2.392 million of our cost, which are the non-FEMA eligible CARES reimbursement, is representative of is our 50% of the remaining 25%. Is that correct? I mean, and I know that's kind of a...
Absolutely correct. You got it.
All right. And so, as Commissioner Burke-Bigler pointed out, because the allocations, there are available allocations for each municipality, Washoe County, City of Reno, City Sparks, that 2.3 million that we've spent thus far, that we can utilize to get the CARES grant funding for, does not have representative costs of the City of Reno. Those City of Reno costs, that 1.3 million will come, their 1.674 million, they'll have to apply for through the state as well, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then on to slide 8, the economic support, the small business assistance. You pointed out in the presentation that this would be administered through a third-party administrator coordinated with the other 17 counties across the state through the National Nevada Association of Counties. But as I read it in the staff report, this is CRF funds will be used for 500,000 of economic small business through a collaboration of the city of Reno and administered by the city of Reno.
Right, I think that was originally contemplated, but we received additional information yesterday that we may not be pursuing that through the city. And actually, for the county, it is a simpler process, because if we did pursue the city of Reno's project, we would have to subgrant that money to them, and Gabrielle is going to talk a little bit about what's entailed there. By going through a contractor and having our own program, we don't have to monitor a subgrantee and do all of those things. This is a program that I understand, and I think you already mentioned that several other counties are using these same contractors to help administer.
Yes, and my understanding of these, Manager Brin.
Yeah, I was just going to add that there's been some difficulty getting specifics on the scalability of the Reno program, frankly. And so that led us to take a look at the NACO program, which is, is modeled after Clark County program that they used. And given that there are specific timelines and date certains around when things will happen, that's what we're recommending at this point.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was on the record for some clarification. And one last question in regards to that 500,000 for small business assistance. Now, would that be able to be applied to by all businesses in Washoe County, or only those within the unincorporated area?
We'll take direction from the board, but our assumption was unincorporated Washoe County, since both Reno and Sparks are planning similar business assistance programs in their jurisdictions.
Okay. All right, thank you. Is there any further questions from any of the commissioners? All right. Ms. Vladich, if you can continue. Oh, okay, Commissioner Jung, you're there, sorry. Madam.
Thank you. Yeah, here. I just didn't have any questions. My question is, have we thought about, because we do have a one-stop shop for business licensing, that Excella program, have we thought of just giving our unincorporated money for business to Reno and Sparks to administer, collect fees, fines, whatever, weigh them, and they give us their money for things like what the governor said last night and his representatives? I didn't go back and count, but they said 17 counties. It's county's authority, county. Can we then use their monies? They can do the businesses, and we can use their monies to do what counties do, which is public health, contact tracing, case management, etc. Has that been talked about at all in these bureaucratic discussions that policymakers weren't involved in?
So let me make sure I understand your question. You're asking if we are discussing with those jurisdictions the prospect of letting them administer the business assistance program, and in exchange, they would direct monies to us for sort of health-related costs like contact tracing, testing, and that kind of thing? Did I understand you correctly?
You said that correctly. Thank you, Mr. Brown. And most importantly, is that the only monies that is completely targeted for small business? Like, is there monies that's also in a pot that says this is for the actual public health emergency? Like, are there different pots, or is that the only pot that has this wrinkle? Because it seems to me they do better at taking that on, and they do a hell of a lot better keeping their businesses open if we could contact trace and test with rapid results and 100% management. All businesses could essentially be open if we had that kind of agility to move so quickly. So why would we keep recreating different silos when we know that we've paid millions of dollars for Excella? Why would now be the time that we separate and split over small business loans? And where can we, is there also a natural place that we can break off and split that puts all of the public health, which by the way, we fund close to 50% of the Board of Health. Reno and Sparks don't even come close, and the Board of Health wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the general fund transfers every year. So I'm just wondering, rather than fighting over who's going to take what, why don't we just give the money to the experts, of course have accountability, and provide the service that we say we're going to do in the amount of scientific time that is responsible and responsive, whether that means making quick non-bid agreements with vendors so that we can get within 3 days, which is the late end of that, results, and 100% contact trace management. Is there a natural division there rather than this back and forth? And do we have the authority to do it? Because, by the way, I heard the governor last night, and maybe legal can give us some insight into this. I heard over and over and over he was giving this to the 17 counties, and he said 17. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Jung.
There was a lot there. So, Commissioner, we are having those discussions. I will say that my understanding is the City of Reno and the City of Sparks are using other grant sources that they have access to that we don't, like block grant dollars, et cetera, for some of these, some of their small business programs and the like. So it's a little more complicated than that. I agree wholeheartedly with your guidance around the need to expand our contact tracing and testing. I don't think anybody disagrees with that. We are having some, that has been a moving target in terms of how you fund that, because as the health officer can tell you, the state has emerged with funding for contact tracing and testing. We're getting our testing primarily done through the state lab. Now there are opportunities to get additional testing through local players like Renown or other testing sources using state funding. So, and again, the health officer's on, but the commitment is to exhaust all available resources to expand our contact tracing and testing capabilities. But yes, there are still discussions going on with Reno and Sparks about how to divvy up what we're spending and for what.
Okay.
Okay, a couple things I want to say to that, Mr. Chairman. Number one is the City of Reno has gone out asking their constituents how they want them to spend their CARES Act. So that, to me, is opposite of what we should be doing in an emergency, because this is science-based, not public opinion-based. And then secondly, I want us to stop focusing on how many tests can take a day. I want us to shift. If this is an emergency, I really wish staff would tell us what they need so your policymakers can make the budget adjustments for you and stop playing these bureaucratic games in the middle of an emergency, and let us loosen that up for you and start putting that money towards it, because otherwise we're going to sit around for weeks and weeks talking about where can we get the money. That's my job, to find you the money. So show us some 3 options to do that. If we can, anticipate that we'll get paid back, or we won't, and we'll deal with it then. But in the middle of the emergency is not the time to start counting your ducats. Sorry, and I know that's your job, Mr. Brown, and I know that's Ms. Boletich's job, but our job is to make sure you have the resources, because we live and die on that. We are the leaders in this, and this leader is saying, I'm not monkeying around anymore. We're going to get this turned around, and I don't care about your volume of tests. We cannot get results in more than 3 days, 72 hours. That's the best practice. So, again, I appreciate this broad of how grants work, but that's not really what I'm interested in today. We are in an emergency. Let's start acting like it. And again, volume of tests means nothing if we don't get them back for 5 to 7 days. They're useless. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate that. Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm curious about PPE. As I recall, the state has agreed to pay for all future PPE. Is that correct?
No, they were paying for PPE at the outset of the pandemic, but more recently they've informed us they've kind of done what they're going to do for us. So we have in this projection budgeted about $2.5 million
Okay.
for PPE for the balance of the year. And that is for all 3 jurisdictions based on the run rates we've seen since March.
All right, good, thank you.
I have some comments I'd like to make really quick before we move on to the next allocation. My comments are, I agree with Commissioner Jung. First of all, but in a different sense. The small business assistance, I believe, because of the way, yes, we have a SELA, but because of the way we license our businesses, those businesses that are already working with the county for business licensing need to come through our county staff. I think that needs to remain with the county, the small business assistance, and we should just focus on the unincorporated county. And each municipality should go through their licensing agency if they need assistance, and that municipality should bring forward their own amount of funds necessary to facilitate that. I do agree with Commissioner Jung, though. However, the county has always been and will continue to always be at the forefront of the emergencies as we move through this. And I think that we need to continue to go back and look at the cost-sharing agreement that we have with the City of Sparks and City of Reno, and discuss that in a greater standpoint that we have already offered a number of that support for a significant amount of that support for contact tracing and testing and whatnot, and the public relations portion of that. I think that needs to be an even cost share because we're all in this together, and all entities get benefit from that expenditure. And I agree with Commissioner Jung. The wait time, what I would like to know from staff today is what is necessarily, we have allocated $6 million going forward for new costs. We've paid let me go back to the slide here, 1.7 so far, trying to identify that number. Anyways, we've paid a significant amount or 1.8 million so far to tracing, but that needs to significantly need to be bolstered because, as Commissioner Jung pointed out, we are in a public emergency, and moving forward to identify funds now and start, trying to divvy up how that's going to get paid for, I think is a waste of time. I think we need to continue to do whatever we can to get the testing turnaround time to at least 48 hours, 72 hours at the most. I believe whatever we can do, whether it's through private, outside, or temporary work to improve contact tracing, we need to bolster that staffing so that contact tracing can happen quicker. And we also need to bolster the public relations about self-testing and masks and how that is going to be properly moving forward, because as I said at the start of this meeting, with the school year to convene quickly, sports events continuing, trying to elevate, people are going to need that type of assurance. And anytime a test takes longer than 72 hours, it's, in my opinion, a waste of money. And so there has to be one individual that is spending that money. There has to be a time. There has to be somebody who really is driving that home, whether it's in the manager's office or at the county or at the health district, or an individual citizen outside to come and help mitigate and moderate those programs. That needs to happen immediately, because we are going to continue to waste our time just sitting here spending money idly and trying to fill holes that we'll never catch up with. So those are my opinions in regards to money spent thus far and money going forward. So I guess, and it's a precursor to the next presentation, which is the second allocation discussion. But as Commissioner Jung pointed out, there's numbers in front of us, 6 million for testing and contact tracing, but what does that represent? Is that how many individuals, what kind of tests are those? What is those programs? And so I'd like to know that level, is that 6 million enough? Or does that have to be, or should that be more? Other than we have $4.5 million set aside for small business assistance, should we move more than? Do we need that $4.5 million for small business assistance? I haven't seen those numbers of a necessary need out there in the community, and right now, in my opinion, the necessary need is contact tracing, testing, and that turnaround time with labs, whether that's private or with the state lab, and then also cost sharing agreement on public relations, whether that's through the Washoe County School District, the City of Sparks, City of Reno. How do we do that so that we can figure out what that new normal will look like for us?
Well, let me clarify, Mr. Chair. The $4.5 million for business assistance, where are you picking that number up?
That's off of page 2 in the CARES Act.
That is not the county's expenditure.
Those are new costs going. It falls under new costs going forward, Mr. Brown. Manager Brown.
Page 2?
Page 2. That's this on the staff report right here.
On the staff report. I'm sorry, I'm not looking at the staff report. Let me just say this. This board has been clear to staff, and I think to the health officer, about the need to get to the kind of turnaround times for testing and contact tracing that we all know needs to happen. We are not stutter stepping in terms of affording the resources to do that. I do want to manage your expectations that this is a national problem. It's not just a problem here in Washoe County. The labs are all at capacity nationally. And so, yes, we are pursuing new lab capacity and testing capabilities, again, with folks like Renown and other providers. We will continue to do so. But I do want you to know at a certain point, we have contracted for basically everything we can. And we're trying to work with the state labs as well as the private labs to expand that capacity so we can get there. Contact tracing, again, I think the CARES Act funding and state funding that we've received over the last 2 to 3 weeks is going to allow us to greatly expand what we're doing, beyond what we have today. We were, in some cases, struggling with the decommissioning of some of the National Guard folks that were working with us in the spring, that are returning, that are leaving the command. But I think we have our arms around that. We will continue to focus on it. But I have to be honest with you and say, at a certain point, it's not a matter of money. It's a matter of where can we find the resources we need. And we're in one of those. When it comes to test capacity and how long it takes to turn around those tests, that's where we are right now. It's not an issue of us not spending the money.
Okay. So it sounds like it's a capacity issue, but I still go back to my previous statement, and is that I think we need a little bit more detail in regards to what is that capacity availability, so that we can, as the commission, sit and say, what are we willing to spend? Because there's always a price, as you well know, and I do too, is that you can always, if the cost can be managed and manipulated if need be to get the service need be. So we can find the service somewhere. It just may cost us a heck of a lot more to do so if we need to facilitate that. And that's really a decision of this board to make that decision, whether that's worth it or not for our citizens. And I don't have enough of that detail here. And so for me to sit and make a decision if $6 million is enough for contact tracing going forward and testing going forward, it's concerning for me. And so I guess that's my concern is how do we do that?
Fair enough, and we'll get you the details. The purpose of the discussion today was to get that kind of feedback on directionally, where do you want us to put the focus? I think as a result of your comments and Commissioner Jung's comments, we get it. We'll go off and tighten up the plan and come back and tell you what that gets us. Because I think what I'm hearing from you is you want to know, does that get us to a point where we're getting the 24 to 48 hour turnaround, and we're doing the contact tracing on a timely basis, and if not, what does it get you? We'll get that for you.
Right, and I don't want to hold up the plan, and I don't want to hold up the spend because we don't know what that is, but what I do want to know is make sure that we're moving forward functionally so that we can do that. So maybe prioritize today what our spends should be by this commission for you to come back with us with how that money's being spent to better facilitate the needs of the community. Madam Vice Chair, I have you send in.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I completely agree with your assessment, and I think you're right on where testing and contact tracing is concerned, and I'd also like to see a breakdown on that. But I have also a question on small business assistance. I'd like to see a breakdown on what that means. So small business assistance, what are we talking about? Money for plexiglass, what are we talking about? I think we need some clarification on that so that we know kind of where we're headed with it.
Sure. Commissioner, Dave Solaro is available to give you some input on that.
Okay.
Dave,
Actually, he can provide it, or it can just be provided in writing.
Okay, that's fine.
And that'll make it easier. Then we have a paper to look
But in
at.
broad strokes, because this is another area of guidance, because from this meeting, we will need to determine what are the eligibility requirements and what kinds of things can you spend it on. I believe there are two broad categories. One is working capital for things like PPE or hand sanitation, those kinds of COVID-related expenses a business might incur. The second category, I believe, is for employee expenses based on the size of the business.
Right.
There are different levels in terms of what one can expect. So it's really in those two areas, but we will come back with more specifics.
Thank you, because I think this is really important, because I think at this stage of the game, we're looking at the new normal for our county. And so what does that mean for our businesses, and how are we going to assist and help in those issues? So I think that's important. One of the other areas that is really hitting us in a lot of areas is housing, affordable housing. And so I'm wondering if there isn't some way to also put some of these funds into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, since we have the trust fund, but we've never funded it. And perhaps maybe the cities would be interested in putting some into that also, that would allow us to have more funds in there. And then, of course, that would require Mr. Solero and his counterparts to say what kind of agencies get this, and I mean, what kind of developers and contractors get this money to help with building affordable housing. But I think that's something we should also discuss and look at.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, and Commissioner Jung.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Brown, I have a question for you for the record. Where did the National Guard members go that they're no longer here?
My understanding is, Commissioner, that the White House didn't approve the extension of the Guard beyond the end of the month. So the governor did approve the Guard, but it was a state-level engagement as opposed to federal engagement, and that led to some of the folks that were working with us not being with us any further.
So what my point is, Mr. Chairman and the rest of the board and the public listening, I think it's been signaled with the population density, as we always are signaled, with making it over 500,000, and that our troops have been redeployed to Clark County. We are on our own, and that's okay, because we're good at doing this on our own, and we have a manager who's worked in private industry who knows what it's like to go alone. So that's not a criticism. That's just important information for everybody to absorb and take in and to make decisions on for the rest of, I would say, until next August, frankly. So I just wanted that to be clarified. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Jung. And then my understanding, Manager Brown, is that with the disbandment of the National Guard, that the Nevada System of Higher Education will be bringing on students to work with the health district and with the county in contact tracing, and that those individuals could be trained as quickly as 2 weeks to get those individuals online, and also help with testing at our post in the near future. Is that correct?
That is correct. And if the health officer is on, he could give you more insight on that. But that's the kind of detail that it's been difficult to model, because we can look at what the costs are to hire let's say the contact tracers, if we are to hire them directly into the health district. This is a new development, as you're saying, that will provide additional capacity for contact tracing in the post through a new funding source. But we need to get our arms around that and get that detail in front of it.
And I go, this comment goes back to the presentation that Ms. Village gave us for the first allocation. We were very static because we didn't know what we were doing with. We just kind of spent and went with it, but we weren't very dynamic because we just didn't know what we were dealing with. Now we have somewhat of a better handle of what we need to do to address flattening a curve to allow for hospitalization levels to remain level, and try to flatten a 4-day moving. And I think it goes back to what Commissioner Jung said. We need to be dynamic and develop plans that are flexible, that allow us to spend as we see fit, because things have changed, as you and I very well know, every day, if not every hour sometimes, in regards to what it was an initial plan now changes. And as we saw last night, when there was a statewide, we were pushing for a statewide type of initiative, now has changed down to a county-specific initiative based upon now new directives. And so as things change, we need to be flexible and nimble with the ability to spend that money, but with the same caveat of having that specific direction of addressing certain issues, i.e. contact tracing, i.e. testing capability, public relations, those types of things. And it might be a way, in my opinion, it's not a waste of money. And this is, but to have somebody specifically, as we had an incident manager when we had the first during the outbreak and whatnot, how we were dealing with that. I think we need to have a specific manager or somebody, a specific individual, oversee how those dollars are spent quickly and as things change, in concert with yourself, in concert with other individuals, but somebody specifically heading up that response so that we can adequately address the needs of the community in a nimble, dynamic fashion, as any business would do. So those are my comments in regards to moving forward into this second allocation, because we're looking at these new costs, but those costs may change, as we've discussed today, based upon what those prices are and what the needs may be. And so we need to be nimble to have somebody act on behalf of this board and yourself, Mr. Manager, so that we can be agile and respond to this epidemic in a way that is not so clunky or government and bureaucratic-esque as we've seen in years previously. So those are my comments. I have none more. So I think we've taken a bit of time here. Ms. Village, I apologize for kind of getting off track, but I'll give it back to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Chair Lucy. Actually, that was a perfect segue and a great discussion on the second allocation. Just to follow up on that a little bit, yes, we do need to be very flexible here, and we have a dynamic situation that's changing. And so I just want to point out that this is a plan. As things change, that plan can be amended. The second allocation is going to be on a reimbursement basis. So it's not going to be like what we just showed you, here's what we spent over a 4-month period and get a lump sum. We will have to report monthly to the state, provide documentation, and then get our reimbursements based on what we've spent. So it is very flexible, but something to remember is that we do have to expend the money by December 30th. So that again speaks to meeting those most dynamic and immediate needs, I think. And anyway, I will turn it over to Gabrielle just to take you through the second allocation for the discussion.
Thank you. I wanted to just start, I want to go back to Chairman Lucy's comments on the staff report. Those costs of $6 million identified, those are regional costs. So those are shared. And my understanding is we're working towards an emergency procurement for the testing. On all of these expenditures, we're working to ensure that they are done as quickly as possible. This is federal funds, but all of us are very cognizant that the most important thing is we get what we need as soon as possible for that response. And we want to follow all the guidelines so we get reimbursed, but our first priority is to ensure that we get the contracts in place and the resources available to us. The other one, I know one of the comments is regarding the public outreach campaign. That is identified in the first allocation. So, and that is underway as far as identifying the vendors to complete that process. So a lot of these things are very dynamic. Certainly the first allocation was a good portion of the planned expenses were identified by department, so they are.
Gabrielle, you're getting garbled again.
I'm sorry, the feedback from your computer is really difficult for the clerk. She's having a difficult time for the record for you. I don't know if there's any other way that you can sign in audio-wise, or you can call in via audio.
Or maybe, Christine, could you cover those slides? We can hear you fine.
Yeah. Ms. Valletish, could you take over for Ms. Enfield? And I apologize.
Absolutely. Absolutely, I will. And Gabrielle is correct that the public outreach costs are in that first allocation, as well as a number of department requests. So for the second allocation, we have a due date of September 1st to provide our plan of expenditure number 2. And as I mentioned, it is a plan. So it doesn't mean if things change, a month or two down the road and there's a more immediate need that we can't amend that, but we are required to provide a plan, and it should be by broad categories. And on the slide there, that blue box kind of just gives you a recap of those allowable categories. As I mentioned, it's on a reimbursement basis. Expenditures must be made by December 30th. We have had some requests already internally from departments, and we've listed some of those there. The Washington Street homeless shelter costs, that's that temporary shelter to isolate women, is included there. Child Protective Services has a contract in need for foster care children with COVID-19, so they've requested funding through the second half of the allocation. We're looking at a possible software upgrade for our call center for backup support on contact tracing. This is really important. As you know, the call volumes are just very high between both the health district operated call center and our own call center, Washoe 311. There may be some additional technology needs that we're looking at. Obviously some personnel that are eligible. The Sheriff's Office has requested a possible project to remodel their visitation area. There's an issue with public entering the building and where the visitation area is set up is not very conducive for social distancing measures and, for COVID-related precautions. There's also a possibility of assistance to some of our nonprofit organizations. And then other needs, obviously, I think we've got a good start on that from the discussion, and we hear you loud and clear. But here's an opportunity for some other thoughts, if you have them.
Any additional thoughts in regards to a future plan or potential expenditures that may be up there that any of the commissioners don't feel are prudent, or the ones that are not up there that need to be added to the plan for future expenditures? I think it's really difficult, Ms. Voletich, to, like I said, I think it's really difficult to address things. One of the things that I would say that I see that might be up there, should be up there, that isn't currently, would be that if, for whatever reason, the current plan for the Washoe County School District is to reopen, but if if the school district feels that, or the health officer feels that that is not a potential that they could go and endure, we're going to have to find ways just very similar to Clark County. And I've been in discussions with Chairwoman Kirkpatrick in regards to what is potential daycare or some sort of programming for children, for parents that need to stay home and do distance, social distance learning for those individuals, but have to decide between their children and their job if they have to go back to work to pay for rent and food and different things like that. So I think that assistance is necessary there in regards to childcare and what that may be programming. If we need to bolster and help with the city of Reno and those types of programming, I think that, or the city of Sparks, those discussions should be also up there as potential expenditures based upon, but it's very difficult to say what we need to spend money on in the future, not knowing what those costs or what those needs are going to be immediately. So once again, that flexibility is going to be necessary, and a manager to oversee that, I think, is tremendously important as well.
Thank you.
Some feedback, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I have a question. So instead of waiting for UNR to get their students a 2-week training course, do we have any staff that union permits to reassess and reassign who already do case management? That would, or is that 2-week training program for, let's say, a master's of social work the same as it would be for a public health intern? Is the 2 weeks, because I don't understand the bureaucracy of that, which I'm sure has been turned completely bureaucratic. In terms of, I'm sure they're learning how to use the software, et cetera, but if we can expedite that too by assigning staff, and I believe, because we're still under emergency orders, I don't believe that there are any collective bargaining units ability to interfere with that during this emergency, because if that is the case, why aren't we reassigning workers, especially when we're already talking about we're going to lay off, certainly in the future, there's without a doubt that's going to happen. Why aren't we making people more essential and offering this to them? Because we do know we made a promise not to lay off to begin with, but that we also asked staff to make, when we made that promise, that they also realized we might eliminate their job, but they're not laid off because we have these 3 fabulous jobs they can choose from. So I'm not hearing anything of the deftness or the agility or the ability with the emergency orders that were in place. I get what Ms. Voletich and Ms. Enfield are asking for, but essentially, I believe our manager has the full authority to really do what he believes is best vis-a-vis it being a emergency. So can I get some more feedback on that? Where are we with that? We have lots of staff. I believe we have like almost 3,000 FTEs. So that's what I'm not clued in on at this point. I don't serve on the Board of Health anymore, so I don't know any of this stuff. Can somebody give me a 5-second reassurance or disabuse me of what I've assumed?
So, Commissioner, we have been, as best possible, reassigning staff since the beginning of the pandemic, everywhere from libraries to the DA's office to the treasurer's office to assist with contact tracing and call center management. I think the challenge here, and I won't speak for the health officer, the 2 weeks is kind of the nominal period it takes for folks to be identified and if possible, to shadow the investigators if that's the role they're gonna play before they're ready to go on their own. So that's not a particularly long period of time. I think what we have to remember here is these contact tracers, this is the new normal. And so you don't want to train folks similar to the National Guard Challenge. If you train a bunch of folks that you're ultimately going to lose, you're just pushing the problem down the road. So that's why we're trying to partner with UNR and get the students or identify other resources to do contact tracing.
Thank you. Totally understand. Appreciate that input.
Yeah, Commissioner Jung, you have any further questions or comments?
I do. I want to say the thing that I think nobody wants to say in the room, and this needs to be talked about probably at an international level, but in my world, all I care about is Washoe County, and that is parents of children age 0 to, let's just say, 6th grade. I don't know. I don't have kids. You guys all know your own kids. Parents assume and have created their life on the fact that their children can either go to daycare or they will be at a public school from kindergarten till 6th grade so that they can be productive members of our economy and society. They've always relied on that. So I'd also like to see a big move and push here in Washoe County, and I don't care what Clark County is doing, in terms of, except, Mr. Chairman, please don't take that the wrong way. I love that you're in contact with Chairwoman Kirkpatrick, but I think we can be, because we're much smaller and easier to communicate with each other, we need to be working with the City of Reno, City of Sparks, and Washoe County programming, and Big Boys and Girls Club, or whoever your favorite place is that takes care of children and supervises them, to make sure, and the reason why I say Reno and Sparks, they are the premier service provider for recreational activities. We do open space and some things, but they really provide a whole bevy of services. So we also need to be providing for parents, no matter what the school does, because the schools will open and close and divert. And you know that's going to happen, because we can just look at the rest of the world and how this has happened. But we absolutely need to crucially be talking about where can we provide child supervision for children age 0 months to, I don't know what 6th grade is at, 12 years old. And this is going to take the entire community and all the jurisdictions to provide that type of adult supervision of children. Curriculum is the school board. I have no interest in that. They can figure out what they want to do about curriculum. But to pretend like parents are not relying on these traditional resources that they pay money for, by the way, whether it's paying for a daycare provider or paying taxes like all of us for the school district, we got to talk about that, Ms. Valetich, and that needs to be somewhere for your paperwork, a big, broad place to the government saying, this is what we're going to do, and that also is going to mean we're going to have to change all the time with that. So I'm sorry to bring that up. I know it's a hard thing to talk about, but I can tell you from having constituents of every level of the demographic and socioeconomic scale, their biggest challenge is, I mean, let's face it, women, you can't do it all. You can't have a spectacular career and be a full-time mom. It's impossible. And their productivity is failing them. And I also think we are failing them because we are looking at parents going, well, what's your problem? Well, I don't think they have a problem. I don't think they're failing as parents. They sure feel like they are, because this is not the way that their life has been conducted, nor what they have prepaid for in government to rely upon. So that's another critical area that we need to be focused on. But I still say we can't do that till we can turn around the test times and the contact tracing. Otherwise, we're just, what a waste of time. So, but that needs to be a broader general thing. When we get the testing and the contact tracing, we better be thinking, where are these people's children going to go so they can go back to work and pay taxes and pay their rent, their mortgage, whatever it may be. And I think we need a broader community discussion about that.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Jung. absolutely agree with you in regards to that flexibility and to address those concerns. So, anything further? All right, seeing nothing.
Can I just say?
Yeah, Manager Brown.
I want to thank the commissioners for your input. If there are additional ideas after this session that you want to share with me or the team, love to hear it. And the guidance has been clear. And we will come back to you with more specifics that you can take a look at what we're planning to do. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Manager. Ms. Valetich, you do have a couple more slides, at least one slide left, so I'll let you finish out with that last slide.
Okay, I will just quickly go through this, but it's worth noting, based on the discussion just a moment ago, there are a number of nonprofits and other government entities, and in working with those entities on these items, if we do subgrant some of this money for adult supervision of children or for any other purpose, we need to note that per NRS, we can only, as an organization, grant funds to other governmental entities and charitable organizations. So that means nonprofits, cities, GIDs, those types of organizations would qualify for a grant of these funds. And of course, there is action required on our part. The board would have to authorize it by resolution, which certainly we can come back and the board can do that. We would have to administer and ensure compliance, including a risk assessment, agreement, and monitoring to make sure that the funding is being expended as intended, because we don't want to be on the hook to have to pay it back later on. And again, subrecipients would have to spend their grants by December 30th. Best practice to do a competitive process, that's always a good process, but we just wanted to quickly touch on this as we're entertaining ideas of possibly granting funding to other organizations or nonprofits. And that's really all we had. I think the next slide just asks for if there are any questions or direction, and I think we've gotten quite a bit today, but if there's anything else, please share it with us.
All right, thank you.
Or, as the county manager mentioned, contact him with any other ideas afterwards, and we'll be sure to include those.
All right, thank you, Ms. Valetich. We appreciate you, Mrs. Infield, joining us today and providing us with that presentation. It was very, in my opinion, thought-evoking. I think there's a lot that we need to address going forward, and this is a pandemic. This is a healthcare emergency that we need to. This is not going away. As you can see, we're all still wearing masks, and we're going to need to figure out ways to address all factors within the county, from children and populations within the county, from children to seniors to businesses, to properly make sure that they have the support they need from the county as a county taxpayer to continue to evolve in this new normal, whatever that may be. And I think based upon your last slide, Ms. Valetich, I look at, once again, I say another, if we are going to subgrant any funds outside of the county that aren't managed directly by us through our departments, once again, you pointed out the county must administer and ensure compliance, including risk assessment, so that those funds could be reimbursed through that second allocation, which then again just asserts to me on the necessity of a manager to directly oversee the spending, the cost requests, a number of issues as it pertains to any dollars going forward for that to carry out the commission's wants and wills for that funding. So those are my comments on that. Any further comments by any of the commissioners? I think the staff got a ton of direction today. Mr. Manager is over there nodding his head, giving me the thumbs up, so that's a good thing. Commissioner Jung, do you have anything final comments?
The only thing I want to say to you, Mr. Chairman, is I am so proud of you. I'm proud to be your colleague, and I think that this is a very necessary emergency meeting. And I'm pleased to know that you're not afraid to call an emergency meeting. Not that you've ever been afraid, but I really appreciate your leadership in this, Mr. Lucy, and I'm not just blowing smoke. You have, I look to you for this, so, and you have done nothing but do everything correctly as far as I'm concerned. So I want to take this opportunity to thank you for calling this special meeting, which I'm sure not any of us really wanted to do, but that's why we have you as chair, and you get to, you get to herd all the cats here that are in the building. So I don't want that to be unsaid. I appreciate it. And as I said to you privately and publicly, I'm just here to do what you want me to do, and I'll do it. Just tell me. Okay?
Thank
and
you.
the rest of the commission as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jung. We do appreciate that. And look, I think we're all here to do our job, just as the legislature is convening right now, and they worked over the weekend, which is, to me, just a thankless job sometimes. I think we owe it to the citizens to be here and continue to provide. But I do thank you for the comment, the compliments. I do appreciate it, but and not needed. But anyways. With that, I think this is up for possible action. I think that we've given staff plenty of direction. I don't think there's an emotion necessary today, but we do have potential public comment because it is, so Madam Clerk, is there public comment?
Actually, no, Mr. Chair, there isn't, but I believe you need a motion to accept the federal grant assistance allocation from the state of Nevada.
The 10.1 million? The 20.6 million.
Let me go back there.
I'm just reading the agenda item, and it says accept federal assistance, so I'm assuming you need a motion to do that.
Okay, let me go back here. Yeah, okay. Okay. Madam Vice Chair, if you can make that motion for me.
Sure. I move to accept the Federal Assistance of Coronavirus Relief Fund, CRF, allocation from the state of Nevada Governor's Finance Office in the amount of
$20 million.
I'm sorry, $20,254,818 with no county match, retroactive from March 1st, 2020 through December 30th, 2020, and authorize the county manager to sign award documents and direct the comptroller's office to make the necessary budget amendments.
All right, and I'll second that. I'll second that motion. So I have a motion and a second to accept the $20 million allocated to us from the state. I will, Madam Clerk, is there any further public comment? Do you have any?
Let me check one more time, Mr. Chair.
I'm seeing none
I
from
see
Zoom.
no email, and I don't believe there's
none for
anybody on Zoom.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. So we will close public comment, bring it back to the board. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously with all commissioners voting, with Commissioner Hartung being absent. All right, we are on to item 7, which is our final public comment of the day. Mr. Manager.
Item 7 is public comment. Comment heard under this item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the commission agenda. The commission will also hear public comment during individual action items with comment limited to 3 minutes per person. Comments will be made to the commission as a whole.
All right, thank you. Madam Clerk.
We have, I believe, 3 voicemails for public comment. The first one is Anne Marie Grant.
All right, if we could play those now.
8/4/2020, item 3. I just want to remind you that you guys, the Washoe County Commissioners, had many George Floyds under their watch when you weren't following your duties under NRS 211.020, to include my brother Thomas Purdy, who was killed at the jail. I'll play for you again, my brother being asphyxiated to death and begging for his life.
Okay. Oh.
Don't you understand that we're trying not to talk right now? You gotta bend your leg, or else we can't take it off the cart. Keep your pushes like that. Put the body down. You gotta put it like that. The other option, we can undo the cart and just control his arm.
I'd like to mention that at the end of this video, the deputies congratulate each other and say, "Good job, guys." So you can watch the visual to go along with this. Thank you.
All right, next.
Next up is a call from Dan Stanfield.
Yes, my name is Dan Stanfield. I live in Lemon Valley at the corner of Nectar and Birch. The people that live out here in the vicinity of Nectar, in the corner, are concerned about the traffic. Everybody's speeding up and down Nectar. This is the only way into this neighborhood because Arkansas has been closed since the flood. I've at various times over the last few years had the sheriffs out here and patrolling the area, but by the time they get out here, everybody's gone to work and there's nothing going on. We get a lot of traffic and speeders early in the morning going to work and coming home. Now, the kids, when school starts, they all stand on the corner of Nectar and Birch and the corner of Chesapeake and the corner of Chestnut and Nectar. And we were wondering, I've asked the engineering department to do a study on the traffic to see if they could develop some sort of calming device. And I haven't seen anybody out here doing that. So a few of us neighbors were wondering if we could install speed bumps at the cost of us. We would pay for it, or some stop signs. It would be nice to have stop signs making the intersections like at Nectar and Birch a four-way stop, and maybe down at Chestnut and up at Chesapeake. But anyways, I invite any of you to come out and sit in the morning for a little while and watch how everybody drives up and down this street. Everybody's in a rush and doing really like 50 and 60 miles an hour. You can't walk anywhere except, try to stay out of the ditch so you walk.
Okay, and then our final public comment.
Our final public comment is from inmate number 137492.
And he's an inmate with.
Hi, my name is
He's an inmate with the Washoe County Sheriff's Office, correct?
I believe so.
Okay.
inmate number 137492. I am an anarchist and a proud anti-fascist, and I have two very short questions. based on the fact that Governor Sisolak recently mandated masks being worn in public spaces, and based on the fact that Sheriff Balaam recently told this commission that 5 staff members from the Washoe County Jail, the facility known as Parr Boulevard, have tested positive for COVID, my questions are these. 1, have any masks ever been provided for any of the inmates who have been or currently are housed in a facility called Parr Boulevard? Question 2, has anyone who has ever been housed or is currently being housed in the facility called Parr Boulevard been tested for COVID-19? I ask these questions because they're incredibly relevant to our community. People are processed in and out of that facility all day, every day, all night, every night. And if they're being exposed to COVID for the sole fact that they may have not committed any crime but are too poor to make bail, so they're forced to stay in this facility for what, 3 days? Short time, but were they exposed to COVID while they were there? And were any precautions taken by the Washoe County Sheriff's Department or the city to see to it that this threat to human life is mitigated? Again, the questions are, has any inmate housed in Parr Boulevard been required with a mask? And have any inmates been tested for COVID-19, seeing as Sheriff Balaam has told us that 5 staff members in the facility tested positive for COVID? Thank you for your time. All power to the people.
All right. Do we have any final public comment via Zoom? There's no public comment, so we will close public comment and bring it back to the board. We are on to item 8, Mr. Manager.
Item 8 is commissioners, county managers, announcements, reports, and updates to include boards and commission updates, requests for information, or topics for future agendas.
All right, Mr. Manager, do you have anything final tonight?
I do not, Mr. Chair.
All right. Commissioners, do you? All right, seeing none. All right. Thank you very much for everybody for joining us today. I do appreciate the commission convening today to discuss these matters on a special notice. Please be safe, everybody, and wear your mask and practice social distancing. Thank you. We are adjourned.